Welcome back to the Keeping It Real with KC podcast. I, of course, am your host, KC Phoenix. And yeah, a daily thought. Do you know I looked at my spreadsheet, because that's how I keep track of all my episodes and stuff. And I looked at the date. The last time I did a daily thought was October the 4th. October the 4th was the last time I did the daily thought. That's crazy to me. So, here we are. Before I go any further, KIRWKC.com. Main podcasting platform. This podcast is carried on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Overcast, Bullhorn, Amazon Music, Audible, and several other podcasting platforms. Please feel free to listen to this podcast on whatever platform is most convenient for you. And I'm wishing I would have got some water right now. Because, yeah, as a matter of fact, just bear with me. I have to get up. I'm going to make a quick run in the kitchen. Okay, I got my water. So, yeah, much better. Because I didn't... You know how you feel like there's something in your throat? And it's like, okay, wait, what? But yeah, I need my water on standby just in case. So, few things to discuss. First thing is that all the readings are up for all the signs for November. So that's done. My goal, because usually the first 2 weekends of the month is kind of when I rest in a way after doing all the other readings. But this weekend I will start the 2023 readings, which is for the year, and do that. I will do a 2023 reading for the collective, and then I will do 2023 readings for each sign is what I will start working on this weekend to have those done. I don't know if I will upload them this weekend or if I'll wait till December. I'm debating on that, is what I'm doing. So yeah, but either way, the goal is to start working on those this weekend, knock on wood. But as for the regular readings, the general readings, the love readings, and the money readings, all of those are up for November. If you are a Scorpio, you receive the bonus reading because obviously Scorpio season is November. So yeah, our bonus readings for each one. So you should have 6 readings total, Scorpio. Now let's get into the daily thought. Hope everybody's doing great today. So I have this card here. And if you watch the tarot readings, you're probably familiar with it, which is the Wheel of Fortune. Even though the lighting isn't really, if I turn it that way, you can sort of see it. But yeah, the Wheel of Fortune. This card. Now, this card is known as fixed energy, which the fixed signs of the zodiac are Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus, and Leo. So Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus, and Leo is the fixed energy here. However, the Wheel of Fortune is about expansion. So also it is Jupiter energy is what this is, because it's about expansion. It can contract too, because obviously as it turns, it can contract. So with it being Jupiter energy related to expansion, I've mentioned this before a few times, I consider that the will of God. And I say that because Jupiter, which is in Roman mythology, in Greek mythology is Zeus, but in Roman mythology is Jupiter. And with Jupiter being the king of the gods, so it's like Jupiter as high as it gets. That's how I look at it, where it's the will of God or the will of the divine. One thing about this wheel here, it does not stop turning. Like I said before, while things can be up, things can also be down. It can be reversed. Because nothing stays in a constant state forever. As this old saying is, like, success is never forever, failure is never final or fatal, depending on which quote you listen to. But one thing I like to say to people, and the message I want to give to people with this wheel right here, of God that is always turning. The will of God never stops turning. When you see people up or when you see people down, always remember this. The grace you give people when you are up will play a major role in the grace you receive when you are down. There are people, when they are up, it's almost like their empathy isn't always there. Their concern for others isn't always there. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying overgive. I'm not saying being overly concerned or anything like that. What I am saying is show some empathy from time to time, because it helps to be empathetic to someone's situation and attempt to look at things from as many sides as possible. That doesn't mean that you can't tell the truth about a situation. Or let me rephrase, you can't speak your truth about a situation, because sometimes even truth can be subjective. But it doesn't mean that you can't speak your truth about a situation. It just means that, okay, you need to take other things into consideration. And one thing I've noticed is that people these days are so quick to hop on a hate train, where it's like, oh, well, somebody doesn't like this person, so I don't like them either. It's like, okay, but why don't you like the person? What did they do that affected you? Or are you just going by what other people are saying? And when something is going on, why are you refusing to grant that person grace and do that? Or are you just hating this person because that's what's in vogue right now? Again, the grace that you give when you are up will play a major role in the grace that you receive when you are down. This wheel does not stop turning. It's always turning. There isn't anyone who will stay in this energy indefinitely. There just isn't. You're going to have good times. You're going to have bad times or delayed times where things are taking forever to come in. And then you'll have good times again. And it may last long. It may not. But when it doesn't last, when that time is ended, then it's down again. Now, whether the wheel is up, whether you're up on the wheel or under the wheel, everything is about perspective. And if you approach things with a glass half full instead of a glass half empty, this reversed energy right here usually turns upright a little bit faster, depending on how you perceive things. If you think you're in this energy and you feel that you can't get out of the reversed energy, or you just feel things are down and stuff isn't working out for you, and you wallow in that energy, then it's almost like it's sticking this in glue. Where it's like, okay, this is where it's going to stay stuck at then. That's the energy you're focusing on, instead of focusing on the good things and what you do have. Which, if you notice the good things and what you do have, that puts you in this energy. And if you're not in this energy, it makes it easier for the wheel to turn to this energy. It's all about perspective. But again, I don't want people to become comfortable with a certain type of attitude when dealing with others when they are up. When you're up, it doesn't mean that you can just treat people any kind of way. And even when you're down, it doesn't mean that you can treat people any kind of way. But the biggest thing, like I said before, is granting grace and not hating on people just because it's in vogue. Not jumping on a cancel train for someone to be canceled just because it's in vogue. Because I promise you, if a lot of these people where grace is not granted to an individual were to actually do their research on situations, they would be surprised about the information they would find versus just going by word of mouth from someone else or going by just a small clip of something that may have been taken out of proportion. And I'm not talking about just necessarily in the celebrity field. I'm talking about in life in general. This happens on jobs with company gossip and stuff where something is said, it gets back to someone else, then another person just takes that little thing that was said and blows it completely out of proportion from what the original meaning was. And then all of a sudden, there's this animosity and conflict between multiple people because one person blew something out of proportion. And because other people allowed it to be blown out of proportion instead of using their mind to discern what is what. They just ran with what was said by someone else. So again, I'm not talking about just in celebrity terms or anything like that. I'm talking about in life terms, is what I'm saying. So, yeah, also another thing about the wheel, where it never stops turning. When I do readings for people, first of all the readings are mostly general readings. There are some situations where I might answer a question or do this or do that. But even then, there's only but so much information I can give people. And there's only but so much room there is for it to happen. And what I mean by that is there's tons and tons and tons of timelines. And when you have free will, everyone has free will. When you throw that into play, it could go anywhere. And one thing I watched Black Adam, and Dr. Fate said something to the effect of, because he was talking about, Hawkman and him were having a conversation. And Dr. Fate was talking about he had seen the future, and it was about something, but him, like, he didn't tell Hawkman or something to that effect. But Hawkman was like, oh, is it permanent or whatever. And Dr. Fate was like, I've seen so many timelines, nothing is absolute. And I was like, okay, wait a second. That was a moment right there. Because he's saying he has seen so many timelines, meaning that there's so many ways something could go. Nothing is absolute. And there was a word there for those who get it. So then I was like, that makes sense. But with the will of God, as it turns, again, it doesn't stay stuck in a position forever. For those people who are looking for change in your life, and you hear that in the readings, it could be your timeline, it may not be your timeline. But when I say change is happening, it's happening because change is inevitable. Now, there are situations where obviously you could get stuck in a time loop because you're still learning the lesson. It's like if you didn't learn the lesson before, the universe is going to put you through it again until you get it. And eventually most people do. But if things are bad for someone, it's only inevitable that things get better. I know some people are like, no, it can get worse and all that stuff. Things can get worse, but also things can get better too. It's only but so low something can go. And then after that, the wheel turns again. And then while that person was at their lowest point, now they're starting to be at their highest point because the wheel is turning. As I said before, it's all about perception is what it's about. If you're glass half full while you're at your lowest point, it makes it easier for the wheel to turn in your favor. If you are glass half empty at your lowest point, it makes it easier for the wheel to stay stuck where it's at for a longer period of time. Now, even though it's stuck for a longer period of time, that doesn't mean that the wheel does not turn. It will still turn. It will just turn slowly. It will take longer, is what will happen. But the wheel will turn because that is what it does. It doesn't This thing called life doesn't stop for anyone. It just doesn't. There's things that's going on. Like, I'll give you an example. Takeoff, if you're familiar with rap, with Migos, which was a 3-person group, Takeoff passed away over the weekend. He was 28 years old. Everyone is sad about, well, not everyone, but you know what I mean. A lot of people are sad about that. But the world didn't stop. The world wasn't like, oh my goodness, Takeoff has passed away. Let's stop time and everything. No. Everything in the world is still going on. That is also part of this wheel. It doesn't stop. That's why I'm saying it's only inevitable that things will eventually get better. There may be moments where you go for a month or months or a year or years until something happens that brings you from the bottom of the wheel to the top of the wheel. My point is that something will happen. You just have to believe that it will happen to expedite the process. But like I said before, the will of God never stops turning. And as that process is expedited and you make it to the top of the wheel, again, remember, the grace that you give when you are up will play a major role in the grace you receive when you are down. Always keep that in mind. But as I said before, the will of God never stops turning. And that is my daily thought. KIRWKC.com, main podcasting platform. This podcast is carried on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Overcast, Bullhorn, Amazon Music, Audible, and several other podcasting platforms. Please feel free to listen to this podcast on whatever platform is most convenient for you. KIRWKC on all the social media platforms. Till next time, be blessed.